Hi everyone, my name is Jan Wegener and welcome back to the Early Bird Photo News. In their seemingly unstoppable pursuit to have the most 24 megapixel cameras in the world, it seems like Canon is yet to introduce another one. Because can one ever have enough 24 megapixel cameras in their lineup? Clearly not, if you ask Canon. But do we need another one, especially if it's going to replace a camera that's barely 2 years old? A few weeks ago on the Early Bird Photo News, we looked into the potential rumor that Canon may be repurposing the R3 stacked sensor in a new camera body, and the R6 series would be the most obvious choice for that. However, at first I didn't put too much weight into the rumor, thinking Canon surely wouldn't cannibalize the R3 like that, and the R6 Mark II also isn't that old. But now it seems like this is exactly what's going to happen, and we will likely see an R6 Mark III with that stacked R3 sensor in late 2024 or early 2025. What I find quite strange about this development is that the R6 Mark II is arguably Canon's best overall performing camera with a fantastic autofocus, good video features with not too much overheating, and up to 40 frames per second. And on top of that, it's barely 2 years old, so does it really need replacing? The main drawbacks I see in the current R6 Mark II is the quite strong rolling shutter in certain situations, the quite small buffer that fills up pretty quickly, and the lack of some video features, in particular 4K 120 frames per second and higher frames per second in Full HD, something like 240 frames per second or 480 frames per second. But besides that, the camera overall is a top performer, and for that $2,000 to $2,500 price point, you get a lot of bang for your buck. And if we compare to the competition of the Sony a7 IV or the Nikon Z6 III, it still holds up pretty well as well, especially when it comes to the autofocus, where I think it still is the best performer overall. The new Nikon Z6 III obviously has raised the bar with a better EVF and better video features, but overall I think there isn't that much of a difference between the two cameras, certainly not something where I would think that Canon really has to upgrade that body. Now Sony may come out with an a7 V later this year or early next year, which may raise the bar in this category, but for now at least I feel like the R6 Mark II sits right within the competition, if not atop of the competition in certain categories. So what's the rush in replacing the R6 Mark II already? Especially when we consider that the potential R6 Mark III will likely have the same sensor as the current R3, and that the new R1 will also have a very fast readout 24 megapixel full frame sensor. So that would give Canon 3 cameras, all with very fast 24 megapixel full frame sensors, which kind of seems a little bit strange to me. Of course, these cameras would all sit in different price brackets, but the main loser here would be the R3 series, with the R6 Mark III also rumored to have a CIF Express Type B card and even higher frame rates. So in the end, it would have the R3 sensor and better specs with likely better autofocus as well. So that really doesn't make the current R3 very enticing and would likely mean that the R3 series is a one and done unless Canon plans to introduce something revolutionary into it like a global shutter at a later stage. The most obvious reason to introduce the R6 Mark III already would be that Canon is planning to introduce some new technology in the R5 Mark II and the R1 that they would also want to see in the R6 series. Now we don't know what that is, but there could be other factors at play here as well, for instance the battery grips, because the current grip for the R5 and the R6 Mark II has been discontinued, and the new R5 will come also with a new battery grip, but that battery grip would likely not fit onto the R6 Mark II. So having an R6 Mark III body that shares more common traits with the new R5 Mark II body may make sense, so then you can have a battery grip for both cameras again. Now, I don't know if that would be enough to warrant an upgrade of the current body, especially so soon within less than 2 years or just over 2 years, but I guess in the end we will have to wait and see. I do know though that it would probably rub a few people the wrong way that feel like they only just bought an R6 Mark II and now the new R6 Mark III is already coming out again. But at the same time, the R6 series is likely one of Canon's better selling cameras, so keeping that up to date and giving that amazing features definitely would make sense. One thing that lends credibility to these rumors is that the current R6 Mark II has seen some crazy sales already, pushing the price well below the $2,000 mark, and that's usually an indication that there may be a replacement coming soon. What are your thoughts on the whole situation? Would you want to see an R6 Mark III already? Or are there things on the R6 Mark II that drive you mad that you want replaced? To me, it seems like unless there's a few major new features, most of these updates would be nice to have, but are not must-haves. At the same time, it would be pretty amazing to see an R6 Mark III at $2,500 with a great new EVF, a stacked sensor, a CF Express card in it, and amazing new autofocus with fantastic video features. And this is definitely something that would also be a tough pill to swallow for the competition. And no matter what camera you're using, if you want to improve your image editing and get the best results from your RAW files, I'd highly recommend that you check out my ProSets, my Masterclass, and my Brush Pack. With my ProSets, I allow you with just one click to transform your RAW files and get amazing results. And in my Masterclass, I teach you step by step everything in Photoshop you need to know to get amazing final images. And with my Brush Pack, I make your life in Photoshop a little bit easier. So if that's of interest to you, make sure to check this out down there in the description. All this talk about new cameras also makes me wonder, why does Canon seemingly not want to upgrade the most obvious choice, the Canon R7? I think this is the one camera that could greatly benefit from a big overhaul, especially giving it better autofocus and a much faster readout sensor. Combining those improved features with better ergonomics, maybe a battery grip and an improved IBIS would make the R7 Mark II a real winner and a must-have camera for most wildlife photographers. And this camera would then also pair very well with Canon's cheaper lens offerings like the 600 and 800 f11 lenses, the 100 to 400mm RF lens, or the 200 to 800mm lens. I really hope we're going to see an updated R7 sooner rather than later. Although we all know at this stage that Canon mainly cares about sports and press photography, and was actually reminded of that the other day when I was on the phone to Canon and that person didn't know me, and so one of the first questions they asked me was, do you shoot sports? So this shows us very clearly where their head is at, but I still hope that we will also see some other cameras other than 24 megapixel fast readouts full frame sensors, because there are still photographers out there that want a fast camera with high megapixels and a nice weather sealed body. So I know that many of you guys have asked me, have you heard anything else about that R7 Mark II? And I talked to all my sources that I have, but no one has really heard anything. At the moment, the talk is all about the R5 Mark II and the R1. And then there's very slight whispers about an R6 Mark III, but I haven't heard anything too concrete yet either. But when it comes to the R7 Mark II, we haven't heard anything else except for a rumor a little while ago where they're saying that they may be working on one, but it's very likely going to come out sometime next year at the earliest. So for now, we just have to wait and see, but fingers crossed that we're going to see an awesome R7 Mark II. And what are some of the features you would love to see in that camera body? When it comes to the R5 Mark II and the R1, we have to wait about 2 more weeks until we finally hear all the announcement and all the specs. Canon Rumors has now also confirmed what I said many weeks ago, that the R5 Mark II will have one CF Express Type B card slot and one SD card slot. For some people like me, that's probably a disappointment, but at the same time, I do understand that people still like using SD cards as well, and they're sometimes easier and cheaper to come by. Even though, especially lately, some of the newer CF Express Type B cards are pretty well priced as well now. So hopefully in the future, at some stage, we're going to see just dual CF Express Type B card slots, but for now, that doesn't really seem to be a possibility. And I've also been told that in the smaller camera bodies, it can be a problem to have 2 CF Express Type B card slots because it can make the camera just too hot with 2 of these hot running cards in there. Speaking about memory cards, last week I showed you some of the new generation ProGrade cards that I got, and this week I also got myself a few new Wyse Advanced new generation cards, so I compare them in the field and see what works best in my camera bodies. And one of the big questions that was coming up is, why are some of the newer cards that are seemingly faster cheaper than some of the older cards? And the kicker here is the sustained or minimum write speed. Because some of these cards, like the Gold ProGrade card or the standard blue Wyse Advanced cards, now have faster download speeds, but have slower sustained write speeds than some of these older style Pro cards like the ProGrade Cobalt or the Pro cards from Wyse. So these older cards have slower download speeds, but actually higher minimum write speeds. So when picking memory cards, you have to ask yourself, now what's most important to me? Do I want one of the newer cards that have a slightly slower minimum write speed but a very fast download speed and come with a very nice price tag? Or do I prefer some of these older cards that have a slower download speed but a higher write speed in camera? So for most applications at the moment, because the faster cards are not really supported in camera, it doesn't matter as much, and having a faster download speed, it's definitely advantageous. But later on, if you have cameras that can take advantage of the faster cards, and you do a lot of 8K video recording, for instance, having cards that write fast in camera makes a lot of sense. For now, unless you want to pay a lot of money, getting both is quite expensive, and you need something like this 2TB Wyse Advanced card that has a fast sustained write speed and a fast download speed. So let me know in the comments, what are your favorite memory cards? Are you going for faster cards already, or are you sticking to your current cards? Also make sure that you give me a thumbs up for the video, check out my channel membership, and hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys in another video very soon. Bye!